The sixth one is using suffering to train in compassion. Say to yourself, just like me, others too are tormented by similar suffering, or even much worse. Train yourself by thinking, if only they could be free from all this suffering, how wonderful it would be. This will also help you to understand how to practice loving kindness, where the focus of practice those who have no happiness. So whenever we encounter suffering, we can contemplate that there are so many sentient beings who are enduring even worse suffering than mine right now. Therefore, at that time, you can generate bodhicitta and then contemplate in such a way, I am suffering quite a bit because of my illness, and please may all other sentient beings not suffer what I am going through right now. In fact, the sentient beings are quite in fact, they are under lots of anguish because of suffering. And for example, when I experience the suffering, I can feel other people suffering. When there was a period of time, I had a sore around my ankle, and I had to limp through and walk in such a way, but around that time it was very difficult for me to see other people who also have difficulties to walk. And then it is because I understood that kind of suffering. For example, once after I get off the airplane, I tried to help others with their luggage because that person also had an ankle or walking problem. So we should try to practice in such a way that to contemplate on other people's suffering as well. And in that way, we will generate more compassion. If you don't want suffering, others definitely don't want suffering either. We can think about the suffering that is endured by sentient beings in war, in famine, and in all kinds of disasters. Of course, other suffering and your own suffering, still there's a big gap in between. As it is stated in the Tibetan idiom, it says that the burning of mugworts, which is a herb, on your clothing is different than the burning on the skin. Similarly, when you have suffering, when you have problem, you would feel extremely uneasy. However, when it happens to people who are far away from you, you may not have any feeling at all. That is exactly the reason why our practice is not good. When coronavirus happens to ourselves or our family members, we would feel great anguish. But when it happens to people who are not related to us at all, then you don't feel anything at all. Same applies to your country. And sometimes people would even think that, well, you deserve it. Look at how you used to treat us. So there are people like that as well. But as Mahayana practitioners, as Mahayana bodhisattvas, when they see other people suffer, they suffer the same. Of course, it depends on your own practice. The example of burning mugwort is exactly the same. When you're burning on your skin, is different than burning on clothing. I think this is quite a great metaphor. when you are the one who's enduring suffering is different than when other people are enduring the suffering. And it would be also different than when people you love or you care are enduring such suffering. So it's all different. That's another method of practice, is to train compassion. The last one is using suffering to cherish others more than yourself. Train yourself to think the very reason why I am not free from suffering such as this is from the time immemorial I have cared only about myself. And now from this moment onwards, I will only cherish others, as this is the source of all happiness and good. From this moment on, make such kind of determination. I will start to help others and cherish others and benefit others. The only reason that I suffer right now is because that you only love yourself, love your own body, love your own relatives and friends, love whatever is yours. Those are the reasons that created your suffering. Therefore, from now onwards, instead of giving up on other sentient beings and repulse other sentient beings, you should understand that love self and hate others is really the source of suffering. Therefore, with the guidance of the spiritual friend, you should understand that we must see others just as ourselves. And over here, not only we don't harm others, we have to give up ourselves. This is a very high level of realization. We can talk about it theoretically, but can we really do that? Can we really benefit others and give up on ourselves? That's not easy. But as Mahayana practitioners, we have to work towards that. This is our responsibility. Well, now ask yourself, why did you make the aspiration of generate bodhicitta? Nobody really forced you to. We all generated, we all aspired for bodhicitta willingly. So since we've already done that, then we should contemplate that all the sentient beings in the three realms are suffering quite a bit. So we should try even a little bit to help others. And that's exactly what we should practice, cherish others more than ourselves. When we talk about we love others, in fact, the majority of the time it is very pretentious. It is that we only love ourselves. And this kind of self-cherishing love is not only harmful to ourselves, it is harmful to others as well. This kind of love with grasping is very, it could create lots of pain to self and others. But the love that comes from Mahayana Buddhas and Bodhisattvas is in fact the genuine love, the big love, the love that is completely true. But for the love that comes from sentient beings are rather very superficial, and that kind of love in some ways can be called hatred, or it's very diluted. In fact, it cannot be beneficial to others. So previously we talked about when we encounter suffering, we have to give rise or learn to train ourselves to have the attitude of cherishing mind and joyful mind. Not only that we should be joyful, we have to have our practice. So the practices are the 7 that are stated above. I really hope all of you would read into all the 7 and maybe pick one or two that you would focus yourself in practicing. I think it would be very difficult to practice on all of them at once, but I think it takes time for you to familiarize yourself with all of them. You can practice upon renunciation, or take refuge to the three jewels, or try to practice on Tonglen, and try to alleviate all the other sentient beings' pain. If you can contemplate in such a way, then our suffering is in fact quite valuable and meaningful. So over here then says that it is extremely difficult to use suffering as the path when it has already struck and is staring us in and it is staring at us in the face. At the point when the suffering is staring at you and you want to practice at that moment, it's probably a bit difficult. For example, right after studying this, and at the end of class, someone tells you that, oh, your parents died. Why don't you practice enjoy this suffering and generate the attitude of joy when you hear such obstacle? But I think it would be very difficult. But at that moment, what you can do is to contemplate that because of the death of your parents and of your loved ones, then you can practice up on generating certainty in samsara is suffering. But of course, it would be very difficult to do it right away. Then what should you do? Then first of all, that is why this is crucial to become familiar in advance with the specific practice to be used when misfortune and difficulties befall us. That is why we need to practice in advance, just as how some soldiers would practice in advance every day, so that whenever there is whenever they have to go to the battlefield, then they would be familiar with all the weapons. So in the process of us practicing, either we can practice up on renunciation or impermanence, or the previous ones we've already talked about, such as Tonglen and so on. Whatever suffering, whatever misfortune that happens, whatever enemy that we're facing, whatever bad conditions that's coming, I think at that time, when all of such all down to on you, your mind would rather be very soft and at ease and big-hearted. I think that is the reason why practitioners have more strength and resilience, and that is how they can succeed through the practice. It is because they've prepared themselves. They've practiced to prepare themselves. Any kind of skills, reading and practice, all need preparation, all need practice. This is quite important. So it is also particularly helpful and will really count if we use practice we know best and of which we have a clear personal experience. This is quite important. Whenever we're young, since we're still young, we still have opportunity, we should really dedicate ourselves to one particular practice. Otherwise, when we encounter impermanence, you won't be able to do anything about it.